6 months ago, we found out Anna had a new job in a new part of the country and we were going to have to move house. 5 months ago to the day, we moved in to this new house. And just under 5 months ago, Andy had his last day at his previous school where we used to live. As of today, he still doesn't have a school and it's getting a bit ridiculous now. Hello folks and welcome to a video I've held off on making for a long time because I hoped I wouldn't have to make it, because the fact I'm making it means things are going really quite badly wrong. We still don't have a school for Andy in our new area. If you're new to the channel, Andy's our 16-year-old autistic teenager who turns 17 this summer, and that is part of the problem, his age, and the fact that we need specialist provision for him. I didn't want to have to make a video on it because I wanted to give everybody a chance to get done what needed to be done. I am aware there's a global pandemic going on at the moment. Schools have been closed. People have been working from home. I understand that is difficult for everybody. But this week we had the straw that broke the camel's back, and with World Autism Awareness Month just a week or so away, I figured that this was probably a time to actually come on and talk about this kind of stuff, especially because I'm also talking about it on mainstream media this week as well. You might have already heard me on Sky News Radio across some of the local radio stations. There's a Sky News interview, there's an ITV News interview, there's lots of different pieces that are going to be appearing in the media over the next few weeks. So I figured I should probably explain to you what's going on so you're fully aware of the situation. So it's not as much of a surprise when you hear me coming on the telly and telling you all about it. So I'll start with the straw that broke the camel's back, then go back and tell you the story so far and explain what I think needs to happen next and why this just isn't okay. And it is another example of something we're seeing a lot of in the media at the moment, of special education needs kids falling through the cracks while the pandemic is going on. Obviously, everyone has big issues that they're dealing with at the moment, and it's becoming increasingly clear that some of the smaller issues are maybe getting ignored, and this is definitely one of them, and we do feel like we're being passed around the houses a little bit. But I mentioned a straw that broke the camel's back, and that straw is this week, after 5 months, I'm being turned down by several local special schools, and a couple of weeks ago, we were offered home tuition, which we turned down as well. This week, Andy was offered a place at a post-16 college. Not a special one, just a mainstream post-16 college, which does have an SEN department. It does have a section where he could go and work and get some additional support. But ultimately, he was offered a place at a mainstream college full of 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, neurotypical kids, an environment he's never been in before, with class sizes of 15 plus, something he's never experienced before. And we were kind of told that we were kind of expected to just take it and say thank you. And I didn't. I got very cross about it because that is just not okay. It's not what we're looking for. It's not what Andy needs. So if we go back and tell the whole story from the beginning and let you know how we got to this point, we can hopefully raise a little bit of awareness of just how bad this situation has got. And it's not just in our area, it's across the whole country. I've had stories from a variety of people. Like I said, I've been involved in some media investigations of this issue. And we're just one example of this going on over the country. So it is something we need to shine a little bit of a light on and make people aware of. So firstly, a brief history of Andy's time in education. He's been in special education since he was 7 years old. He did originally start at a mainstream primary school, didn't last very long. And we've told the stories of it before. There's lots of videos about this on the channel, but the thing that finished off, well, there were two things that finished off his time in mainstream education. One was him being accused of deliberately hurting a teacher because he hit them away when they were trying to fuss over him when he didn't want them to. And secondly, Anna was going to pick him up one day, and as she was walking down the street towards the school, she found 7-year-old Andy walking back down the street towards her, like 10 minutes before the school day was due to finish, where he just let himself out of the classroom, let himself out of the school, and started to walk home on his own. So the two of those things combined, they happened quite close together. It became very clear mainstream school wasn't going to be something that worked out for Andy. So he originally went into a special school over in Nottingham, where he was for a year or so before me and Anna met. Once we moved over to Lincolnshire, he got a special primary school in Lincolnshire, which he was at for 3 years until he was 11 years old, but they only catered for children up to 11 years old. That school was fantastic. It's the best school he's ever been to. They were absolutely brilliant. At 11, he went to a special secondary school. In fact, the school he went to is a special school that was a little bit nearer to where we were living, that actually takes kids from ages 2 to 19. So he could have been going there all along. But he went to the primary school version originally, even though it was a little bit further away, because it was a better school, and it was the one that offered him a place first when we first moved over there. But he went to this new school at 11, had some major teething problems early on that you would have seen around the start of this channel. He refused to go for about a year and a half. It was a real battle to get him back. And it's only been over the last 3 years or so that we got him into a regular habit of going to that school. And by the time he left there, he was enjoying it. He'd had a little bit of time off towards the end of the spring and summer terms of the 2020 school year because of the pandemic, with the school being closed. He wasn't keen on going in during the pandemic, but he'd gone back in September. He'd been going every day. He went every day up until October half term. We moved house during October half term, but he had one more week back at that school after we'd moved, because he also had his respite that week. So I only had to drive him the hour's trip over there twice, because the rest of the week he was going back and forth between the school and respite. So his final day there was a week after October half term. And at the time, we thought it was going to be maybe a couple of weeks off before he moved into a new school in the new area. We knew we were moving house from early September, and we contacted the new local authority back in early September to tell them. And we also told the local authority that we were living in, and both of them said, "That's great, but there's nothing we can do until you have moved. We need that new address. We need the confirmation you've actually moved in case something goes wrong. So thanks for telling us, but we're not going to start working on it until you moved." So we moved. We actually got the keys to the house about 2 weeks before we moved into it. So I told them we'd moved them. So as far as they were concerned, we moved in here very, very early October, if not late September. As soon as we got the keys, I let the local authority know that we'd moved in, and we applied for places at school. We had Andy's educational healthcare plan sent over from the county we were in before to the county we're in now. It got translated into the new version to fit in with the new county. That was done relatively quickly. We gave a list of 3 local schools that we thought would be appropriate. We've done quite a lot of research. There's 3 special schools within 15, 20 minutes of our front door that all look like they'd be absolutely fine. 2 of them in particular look very similar to the school he was in previously. So we kind of thought, we don't really mind which of these 3 we get. Whichever one comes back first, we'll take. And then the second wave of the pandemic hit, and it kind of all went a little bit all over the place from there. The EHCP team within the council started working from home again. Schools started to close, and communication basically became non-existent. We've had a number of tense conversations with Andy's new social worker, where neither us or the social worker can get any kind of response out of the education team, out of the schools, out of the education authority, the HCP team. Schools won't reply to my emails. They won't talk to me on the phone. The social worker's getting the exact same issue. And I think it was just before Christmas, we finally got the first response from one of these schools. So at that point, it had been a couple of months since we applied. So already a very long time. For someone who thrives on routine like Andy does, it was a big deal, but we were willing to let everybody get done what needed to be done. We weren't going to push things too hard, because we realised everyone was working under difficult circumstances. It was a mid-year move, all that kind of stuff. But we got our first reply back from a school, and it was 2 of them came back almost at the same time. One of them saying that they were oversubscribed, so couldn't take him because they had too many students. And one of them saying that they couldn't meet Andy's needs based on his EHCP, but have still, to this day, 3 or 4 months later, they've still refused to explain what they mean by unable to meet his needs. That we haven't had any further information on that. This all happened just before Christmas, and we kind of all agreed to put a pin in it until after Christmas, let everybody have a little bit of time off, and we'd get back to it again in early January. But of course, early January, as soon as everyone's back at school, as soon as everyone's back at work, lockdown hits again. The schools are all closed, and at that point, it became pretty clear this was going to be a long process with everybody working from home and schools not there to reply. We kept getting fobbed off. We kept getting told that schools have 15 working days to reply. in ordinary circumstances, but because of the pandemic, they were going to have a little bit longer. We still weren't able to get an answer out of the school that had said they couldn't meet his needs. We identified another 5 or 6 schools, all within sort of half hour, 40 minutes of where we lived, that would be appropriate for Andy. And we sent a list through and said, can we just ask all of these? He needs a school now. Things are getting really difficult, really challenging. He needs a school. The social worker agreed that we should just be applying for all of those. And as far as we were concerned, they were all being applied for. The only problem is, what we didn't realise at the time was that the EHCP team who were handling the applications had decided it was best to do them one at a time. So they were submitting one application, waiting the 15 working days before chasing them up, waiting a little bit longer because of the pandemic to get a response back, and then only when each school declined him, usually because they were oversubscribed, it was taking a month to be told, yeah, there's no room, we can't take him. Only then would they move to the next one down the list. So we spent several months going through this painfully slow process of applying for one at a time, only to be told they're full. And they refused to just ring them up and say, have you got any spaces, before any applications were put in. I tried to contact the schools myself. They refused to talk to me. They wouldn't reply to emails. They wouldn't return my phone calls. Social worker, again, banging his head against the same brick wall. And it got to the point about a month ago where I got a little bit cross with the social worker and basically demanded that something is done, at which point they put me in touch with a local education arbitration department, who officially are still part of the local authority, but work independently from it and help in situations like this. And they took all of our details. They agreed that Andy should have a school place by now and started to chase it up. And this was the first time we started to get any kind of communication back to find out what was going on. This is when we started to get a little bit more information of which schools had been applied for, who had said they were full, who had said they couldn't take him for whatever reason. And it turned out that this first school from way back at the start that said they couldn't meet his needs never gave any further information on that. No one had appealed it. They'd just read the HCP that we weren't involved in creating, because remember, this has been translated over from the previous one. They'd read that and decided they couldn't meet his needs. But looking at the school on the website, it's almost identical to the one he was at previously. I didn't understand. So we decided to appeal that. So that appeal is going on while they're still working through applying for these other things. And about 2 weeks ago, I got an email. Good news. We've managed to get an agreement for 2 hours a day for Andy to have home tutoring for 2 hours a day, Monday to Friday. Obviously, this is because we're in a pandemic, we can't come to your house. So it'll all be done over Zoom. So you can have 2 hours of Zoom lessons every day. Good news. We've got some education for him. And I just lost my mind at him. You know, there is not a chance. If they had someone coming out to the house, there's no chance he's going to sit and work for 2 hours. But if it's over Zoom, then he's just going to get up and leave or not come down. They're going to get they're going to do nothing useful with him over Zoom for a couple of hours a day. I'm going to have to sit over him the whole time, and it's going to be a battle for me every day to convince him to sit there and do his Zoom lessons. And even then, he's not going to engage with them, because why would he? There's no reason for him to do it. He's never wanted to do schoolwork in the house. School is where he does work. Home is where he does home things. So I just basically said, you've had 4 months and this is the best you've come up with. This is ridiculous. I am putting in a formal complaint. I'm taking legal advice. And I just got very, very cross with them. And they were very, very apologetic. And they basically said that they didn't realise it wouldn't be appropriate for him. And it became really clear they didn't know what Andy needed school-wise. But I spelt it out for them in great detail, what we actually needed. We needed a school that focused more on social skills and life skills than education. He's not going to school to do GCSEs, to do A-levels, to do maths and English and geography. He's going to school to get him out of the house, get him with other people of his own age, get him to learn a little bit of independence away from me and Anna, and prepare him for life after us. Because the long-term plan has always been that once Andy is late teens, early 20s, he moves into some kind of independent living situation, because we feel like that's the fairest thing for him for the rest of his life. We've talked about it before. We don't want him to live with us for the next 30 or 40 years, and then me and Anna die and him have to find a way to survive on his own when he's 50 years old and it's all he's ever known. It's much fairer for him to learn that while he's young, while he can still adapt to it, and while we're there to support him through it. So that's the long-term plan, and school is really about getting him ready for that next move in the long-term plan. So I explained all that to them, and they said, yeah, we understand. We'll get something sorted. We're going to get some applications in. We're going to find out from that original school why they couldn't take him. And I thought everything was good. I thought we were finally making some progress. And this week I got a phone call offering him a place at the college, and I just got very cross again. Sent emails immediately to the social worker, to the HCP team, the arbitration people, to a number of media contacts that I've made over the last few years, and just decided, right, enough is enough. We are going public with this. We are shining a big old light on it, and we're going to kick our feet and stamp our feet and do all sorts of things with our feet to try and get this situation sorted. I'm doing the "don't you know who I am" thing, which is why I'm making this video, which is why we've done the Sky News thing, which is why I'm doing the ITV News thing. Interestingly, off the back of the Sky News radio thing on Friday, because I did the interview for that on Thursday, I sent emails to everybody again saying, just so you're all aware, this isn't a threat, but just so you're all aware, like I said, I'm now taking this to the next stage. I'm doing some media appearances. I've got an interview with Sky News today. I've got ITV News on Monday. I'm just making you aware of it. I'll be on the radio tomorrow morning. I'm going to be on the TV next week, just so that you're aware. And as if by magic, can you believe it? As if by magic, within 3 hours of me being on the breakfast radio bulletins on Friday morning, we got an email through from that very first school from back at the beginning, the one that couldn't meet his needs, inviting us to come in for a meeting with them so they could meet Andy, meet us, and discuss the potential of offering us a place. Now, that meeting isn't happening for another month yet, so I'm certainly not considering this issue resolved. I'm not going to release the pressure that I'm putting on the situation at this point, because I think it's pretty clear, once again, squeaky wheel gets the oil. Whoever shouts loudest gets what they want. It's always the situation when you're advocating on behalf of a disabled child. If you just accept what you are told, you will just be bobbed off forever. Whereas if you start screaming and shouting and making things difficult for people, you start to get results. And it is terrible that that's the situation it has to be. And I don't feel good having to do it. I certainly don't feel good having to make this video when I've made a video just last week saying I'm kind of done talking about this kind of stuff. But sometimes I've got to ignore my long-term plans for the channel and just abuse my position that I've built up over the last several years to get what Andy needs. And what he needs is this place at this school. So I'm going to be going ahead with the ITV News thing on Monday. Obviously, this video is out and is going to stay out, and I will be revisiting this in a month. There will be a new video in a month letting you know how that meeting with the school got on, and hopefully celebrating, telling you that we've finally got him a school place more than 6 months after moving. But if we don't, I'll be telling you all about why we didn't. And that's the message that I've given to everyone else involved in this process: social services, education, the arbitration people. They are all aware that not only are we doing this, we're also exploring the potential of legal action in the background. But I'm not pulling the trigger on the legal action just yet, partly because doing that means I can't really do this, and I think this is probably more effective. And secondly, I've had experience of using YouTube and using the media to get results through schools in the past, and it worked, and I know that it will probably work again. So we're doing this in the first case, and hopefully it ends up with a positive outcome. But it is awful that this is what you have to do to get what your child needs in 2021. I fully acknowledge that not every parent is in a position to do what I'm able to do. Not everybody's got 100,000 YouTube subscribers. Not everybody has a charity that has put them in touch with so many media contacts over the years. Not everybody has a phone book full of people working for every major broadcaster in the country that I can get in contact with just fire him a quick text and say, this is going on. Are you interested? Which is literally what I sat there doing on Thursday afternoon. Not everyone's able to do that. So not everyone's got that nuclear option to get results. And I can't imagine how much longer this would have gone on if I hadn't have gone nuclear with it. And I've been very patient for a very long time, not wanting to have to do the don't you know who I am bit. But it's not okay. This needs to change. We are a week or so away from World Autism Awareness Month, and this is my message for World Autism Awareness. Autistic kids and kids with disabilities are falling through the cracks because we're using pandemic and COVID as a reason to not focus on them. And I get that there are people dying, and I get that there are people sick and losing their jobs and having their lives turned on their heads. And I get it. I do get it. But at the same time, there are a lot of people in the same situation that Andy is in, both children and adults, who aren't being considered in all of this. You've got policies around wearing face masks that until very recently were completely discriminatory against autistic people. You've had the whole sunflower lanyard project being completely ruined by selfish turds wearing them as a get out of masks free card. You've got people who thrive on routine and getting out into society as their only contact that they have with other humans who've been locked in their houses for the last year, unable to see other human beings and actively struggling with their autism, with their anxiety, with their depression. It's not okay. We can't let these people fall through the cracks. And maybe it's time for me to start making more of a fuss about it and really, really shining a light on the situation. This is the starting point. Hopefully, this gets us to where we need to be, but it's not going to be enough for us to just get Andy into school at this point. I need to see that we are making a difference for other people in Andy's situation as well. So I urge you to use the comment section to let me know your examples of this, your case studies. What services have you not been able to access? What discrimination have you suffered over the course of the pandemic over the last year or so? And if there's enough that comes in the comments, if there's enough examples of stuff that is just not okay, then I, again, will get on the phone, get in touch with the media contacts that I've got and make a fuss and make this a much bigger story that we focus on more than anybody is at the moment, because fingers crossed, touch wood, we're coming to the end of the pandemic. Things will hopefully start opening up and returning to normal. But I think a lot of people are forgetting the impact that it's had and is continuing to have and might have for many years to come on people like Andy, who've now lost effectively a year of his life at such a crucial moment. He's regressed massively because he just sits in his room now and doesn't want to go out. We can't just take him out to the shops with us anymore. Partly because we're not allowed to, but partly because he won't go, because he's used to not going now. All of the good work that we've done with him for years is now gone. We have to start again. We have to get him used to his new area. We have to get him used to his new school. We have to get him used to a new way of doing things. We have to get him used to a new world. And I think a lot of people are letting that slide, and we're not going to let it slide anymore. So fingers crossed the next time you hear me talk about this topic, we have some good news for Andy personally. But don't think we're stopping there. If there's enough, if the situation is as big as I think it is, and that's what the comment section is for, let me know. And if this is as big as I think it might be, we're going to come up with a plan. Thanks for watching, folks.